things are going to happen. Change is part of our life. Being scared of things is not going to solve the problem. I've got to figure out what I need to do to be better at what I do, and then to be able to articulate it enough and to be able to prove that what I say, I'll do.
Hey everybody, it's Pat Cohan with the THSADA Director's Cut. And in this episode, we're going to feature Dr. Leonard Merrell, a longtime Texas public school superintendent who's going to share his timeless insights on leadership, mentorship, and navigating change in today's evolving school and athletic environments. Before we dive into our topics, we do want to thank our partner in this episode, and that's GameStrat. GameStrat is a trusted sideline replay solution supporting coaches and athletic programs across the country, and a valued partner of the THSADA. Thanks so much for watching, and we hope you enjoy this THSADA Director's Cut. What's the weird quirk that makes you effective that really only works for you?
I have learned over time to be pretty persistent about what I do, to be pretty focused on what I do.
What's a unique part of your process to be persistent at what you do?
I know how to ask questions. I know how to probe. I'd like to think that I have a good sense of the people I talk to. I'm in the people business. Being able to make good decisions regarding personnel and people and just being around all the people that I've been in my lifetime is a decent trait. But I look for people who like to work. I look for people who like other people. And so I guess really I'm not that out of character for a lot of other people that would answer that question. But there are certainly some quirks in my life that some people that I probably can't even say in this environment, but that make me who I am, I guess. And I am a people person. I love the work that I've been doing. I've been doing it a long time, and I don't plan to stop anytime soon.
And so, how do you identify if somebody likes people? Because I do agree, especially in this atmosphere, the athletic directors or the coaches that it can infect people really enjoy people. Mm-hmm. So how do you identify those people that have the potential to infect people and impact them?
Well, certainly personality is one of those things, but I've been around a lot of people with personalities that didn't have any substance to the personality. And I think that each of our days kind of accumulate and stack on top of each other, and I think our actions speak louder than our words do. Often I have talked to many people, I've interviewed many people, I've hired many people, I fired a few people. I don't take any pride in the latter, but I like to think that somehow the character of an individual will come out in the conversations, and that if you can ask the right questions, then you can bring out the real substance of what that person is like. And I just leaned on other people to help me make some of those decisions, and then I tried to I wanted to be responsible for the decisions I made, but I used other people to help me make those.
I've gotten to know you briefly through these events, and your involvement has become more and more with the association. And what's exciting about being involved with this association?
Well, the growth to begin with is exciting. To see more and more people at these events is really gratifying to me. To see people who are excited about the work that they do, to see people who are willing to give so much of their own time and give it back to other people, they're really just repaying for all the things that have happened to them during their lifetime. I think that's the way it was with me anyway. And I see people who are really hungry to learn more about the sport. Or to learn more about their work, not just the sport, but just their work in general. And, our times are changing. They're talking in there right now about changing times in athletics, in public education. We've just got to work to move with the times and to find the best part of those movements that make what we do better tomorrow than it is today.
And are you part of the mock interviews and the resume review?
I am.
So let's play a game. I'm an AD, Quad A member, aspiring athletic administrator, and I'm going through the mock interview program. Okay, so you don't know me from Adam. What does this look like? What are the three questions you're probably planning on asking? But then also, like, how does this whole thing go down?
Well, we're talking about a mock interview in this case. I don't know them. And so I've got this one shot. I've got a piece of paper that says something about them. And I just simply ask them to tell me a little bit about what's written on that paper. I want to hear your description of what your life has been like in the last several years. I want to hear you talk about what you envision your future to be. And in that conversation, you're going to have people who they're going to say some things that really give me an idea of who they are and give me an idea of what their heart's really like. It's one thing to be able to articulate something, but it's another thing to really believe it. And it's another thing to really lead and be talking from the heart as opposed to just what your brain tells you is the right thing to do. And so I look for that. It's not always easy to find. In a mock interview, it's not easy to find. But you do see some, on paper, you see some areas that are strengths, and then you see some gaps, and you see some weaknesses there. And then you talk a little bit about whether or not that person's willing to improve on those weaknesses, and if that person will talk about maybe even their strengths, but probably the dwelling on where they believe they need to be in the future, what their thoughts are about that, it probably is as important as anything to me when I talk to them.
Never thought about that. If you don't have a vision for your future, how do you create a vision for others' future?
Yeah, no, there's no question. And to be honest, so many of us, and I certainly could resemble this also, we're just flying by the seat of our pants, as you say, and letting nature take its course. And sometimes you stop, and especially when you get to the age that I am, and you stop and think back and you say, I wonder what it was that first person that hired me saw in me, because as I look back at that guy decades ago, I'm not so sure I would have hired that guy, but somebody saw something there. And I don't think there are many people in this meeting today that wouldn't, if they thought about it, wouldn't say that. Why is it that why are people hiring me? If I get a promotion, why should I get a promotion? Well, if I think about it from the past tense, that's one thing, but I got to think about it from the future tense. I've got to figure out what I need to do to be better at what I do, and then to be able to articulate it enough and to be able to prove that what I say, I'll do. And if there's any one thing that I really like about people that are enduring to me, is when people talk about things that they can do, but then they really do it. And when they do it, well, then you say, yeah, that's a good one. I hired a good one in that case.
So I'm going to flip the script on this. And so you talk about having a vision for yourself in the future. Did you ever see yourself in this role?
No. Gosh, I'm a guy with 2 ag degrees. I have 2 ag degrees. So, if you go back to when I was, starting out in this business, there are a lot of reasons why I started out in this business, and none of them had to do with anything in the future, to be perfectly honest. And as I told my 2 sons on more than one occasion, you got to live in the present. Yeah, you need to think about the future. And as Disney would say, you got to respect the past, but you got to live in the present. And so if you do a good job in the present, oftentimes the future will take care of you. It's not 100%, that's not 100% accurate, but if you don't do well in the present and you're not successful where you are today, then tomorrow is not going to be nearly as successful as you'd like.
I grew up in Alaska and we do a lot of hiking. And I have this weird analogy that I think about a lot. When you're hiking, you can't only look where you're going, and you can't only look where you're about to step, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you're constantly looking up the trail where you're going, you're going to trip on the roots on the ground. We have a lot of roots that come through the trail. Mm-hmm. But if you're only looking at the roots and trying to dodge the things that are right in front of you, then there's no way you're going to get anywhere where you want to go. There's no direction. And so it's this like, when you're hiking, you're constantly looking down and up. And it's kind of like what you're saying. You're living so you don't trip on something right in front of you, and doing a good job of just walking up the hill, but then you're also navigating where you got to go so you can get to the top of wherever you're going.
That's a good metaphor for success. It really is. You can't just live in the present. You really need to be thinking about what the future is like, and you've got to at least have some thoughts about what the future is. There have been plenty of times, probably in your life, and certainly plenty of times in my life, when the future was staring me in the face. But it's not always easy to see, and you hope that you have somebody to help you to talk about that, to maybe talk about the pros, the cons. And there were some decisions, I'll just simply say there were decisions in my life that if we had decided, we being in this case, my wife and I had decided to go in another direction, I suspect we'd have been okay. But I'm not unhappy about any of the direction I've gone. And I just thank God that the decisions I made and that we made were decisions that we made, we being an operative term there, not just me, but we made. And then when we went, we just did the best job we could while we were there. And then if we needed to move on, we moved on. And sometimes we didn't need to, sometimes we did anyway.
Speaking about the future, are you scared about what's coming down the pipe with AI, the changing in the school environment, the athletic environment? Like, how are you sitting with what's going on, and how do you get up every day to make that same impact you've done for the number of years you?
Well, if I were still doing the job that I did a few years ago as superintendent of schools, scared would not be the term I would ever use, to be honest. Nervous possibly about it, but honestly, we've all had challenges. I mean, yes, the AI challenges here, the NIL challenges here, whether it affects public schools or not, it probably will. But being scared of things is not going to solve the problem. But recognizing the challenges ahead and then having conversations either with yourself, but more importantly, probably with other people that you work with, you'll just have to work around it. Things are going to happen. Change is part of our life. It's been part of our life. The change that, I'm a third generation Texan, I guess, but if I think about the changes in that first generation or the second generation and now the third generation, oh my Lord, it's just, it's inevitable change is going to happen. So you just have to embrace it and find the best way to navigate the change that's coming down the road.
For a long time, people would say, for the people that were kind of growing up in the 2010 to 2020, nothing really happened, right? They have it easy. You look back on the Depression, the World Wars, and all these crazy times. But we're kind of getting into our generational moments now with COVID, AI. That's our big, for my generation, that's our big challenge right now is how are we going to navigate that? And it, like you said, it's interesting to think through that and think the generation before us went through the internet. The generation before that went through world wars. Generation through that, depression. So it's like we will adapt, we will evolve, and this is our evolving moment.
My dad was born in 1917. My dad passed away 91 years later. He saw a lot of change. Did he embrace every bit of the change that affected him? Maybe not. But he saw lots of change and had to respond to that. I was born a few years after that, and I'm still here today. And goodness knows I've seen lots of changes. And sometimes we all, fuss about changes. But in reality, when you really get serious about change is going to happen. It's part of life. You just got to deal with it, and you got to figure out how to embrace it and come out ahead, because it's going to change. If it's changing right now, it's going to change a year from now. It'll be different a year from now. So you just embrace it, and that's kind of the direction that I've always taken. And when you say 2010 to 2020 were kind of times when there wasn't a lot of change going on, I'll bet if you go back and look in those 10 years, you'll see a lot of change really did happen, but you just dealt with it. And so it wasn't as big a change. Change probably has a lot more to do with the inside of a person than it does in going back and looking back and thinking, well, today's worse than it was 10 years ago. I've lived through those generations, and I've heard the superintendents, for an example, of the past when I became a young superintendent say to me, boy, I'm glad I'm out of this. You guys have got a lot of stuff to deal with right now. And it just happens. It's going to continue to happen like that. You just deal with it.
Stay on the point on change happens inside. What did you mean by that?
Well, I mean, what all impacts us? I mean, the technology advances have just been unbelievable, truly believable. And so that's more or less what I'm talking about, is that as life changes and as the world changes, whether it be politics, I mean, we're just finishing today a regular session of the Texas legislature. Goodness knows there's going to be some change. And they're talking about change in this meeting today, in this high school athletic directors meeting. Well, they're not in there saying, oh my gosh, I wish it hadn't changed and we need to go back to the way it was. They're trying to figure out how to deal with the changes that come toward us. We're all human beings. Human beings change. They evolve and they look for ways to make things better. And the problem is, or the advantage is that we are humans and we don't all see it the same way. And so we have to figure out how to work together to make this change profitable for the next generation.
This superintendent meetings that are happening here, the legislative council that's coming up, is there anything we can prep our audience on what they'll probably see with the legislative council?
I suspect what they're going to be doing is delivering information to them to help them understand what their future looks like and the kinds of things they better be thinking about, because whether they want to embrace it or not, it's coming. And so you can stick your head in the hole and and act like it doesn't exist. Hey, it exists. So we got to figure out how to deal with it. And so I think that's probably what they're going to be doing, is just getting them to stand up or sit up and wake up and just recognize that change is coming and we're all going to be in this together and we're going to make this work. This is a change. And if something needs to be changed in the future, we'll work to try to make good change come ourselves.
And so we've talked about change throughout history and how everybody's dealt with change the longer they've been in the seat. What happens to the people that don't change? You know, so because you've seen these arcs, right? And there are the people that put their head in the sand and say, hey, I'm not changing. I'm going to go with what I always have done. What happens to them?
Well, change is all around us, regardless of where those individuals go, and regardless of what those individuals that are change, they're opponents to any kind of change, wherever they decide to go, and chances are it's going to be in some other occupation. It's not going to be in this occupation, not public education anyway. They're going to find it there too. We all have to adjust to change. Our life changes. We all get older. I mean, just like our body changes as we age, we got to deal with it. You either deal with it or you don't. And if you don't deal with it, then you're going to hibernate somewhere away from people, period. And that's not what this organization is about.